I've noticed that since I started talking, that I read that piece by Corey Hess about seamless practice or continuous practice. It was not a riff on Dogen's chapter in the Shobogenso, or continuous practice. But it was just an encouragement. It really made such a big difference in my practice. It was an encouragement for us, if we wish to. That's what's so beautiful. It's just if we wish to, if you wish to make all of your life completely part of your practice, whichever way that each of us will do that, if we want to, And something happened there with me. And then I started reading things. And of course, it seems like everybody really that's what it's always been about, But I mean, really. So I like to read partially. I've been talking to the Argentinian people, and they're all freaking out, of course.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because I read something about the Bodhisattva way last Sunday, but absolutely everybody is so concerned about the new president. He hasn't assumed yet, but that makes Trump look like Mary Poppins, And it's the usual, people get sick and tired of the people that have been in power on and off, always rotating and this and that, and then they just pick up some raging, peculiar, loud, obnoxious person, hoping that maybe something will change. I'm just vaguely commenting in that way. So people were very curious, how does one deal with practice and this intense polarity that exists in our country, in all of the countries, really, in Argentina, in Europe, in various places, here for sure. And when somebody is really wrong, when we have a leader that's really the wrong side, how can we, what can we do? Well, and especially because Shantideva, or this other guy that I was reading, 37 verses on the practice of the Bodhisattva, I read a few verses. It's a Tibetan guy. It's a book that was translated by Ken MacLeod and with comments with Ken. And it's beautiful, but it's also, I'm sure many of you have read Shantideva, and it's kind of heavy. It feels sometimes like you have to let go absolutely of everything and just be completely an empty vessel that wanders around the world, making sure that there's nothing selfish that I do. That's how sometimes it feels, To me, it felt the first time I read it. I said, oh no, I can't handle this stuff. 20 years ago, 25 years ago, no, probably 35 years ago. How can we not be upset? How can we not be completely angry? And of course, that's not what it's supposed to happen, I mean, completely angry. The problem is what happens with us. If I'm completely angry, as we know, we went for years here with a president like that. And I know people, they were depressed for 4 years, completely depressed for 4 years. And they would spend 4 hours a day looking at MSNBC and all the commentaries and so I was encouraging them maybe not to do that, not to ignore what's going on, not to not resist certain things, meaning politically, not to not go out in the streets and protest. Please be careful. And of course, we do what we can do. We are human beings and we're political animals. We're social animals. We are all of that. And we're not supposed to give that away. But for our own sake and for the sake of our communities and stuff, can we maintain some kind of care of our way and care of how I receive what's going on out there? Of course, if it hurts, no problem. We don't like to be hurt. But can we work with that as opposed to just lash out and call everybody else a fascist or call everybody else a communist, depending on one side you are, or pigs? It was an interesting conversation, and often having to do too with people that have members of the family or members of the Sangha. Some people said, "I can't believe that some members of the Sangha voted for this person." When we had the politics in Chile, somebody voted against the new constitution, the one that got rejected by almost 70% of the people in Chile. And a Zen person from Argentina called this person from Chile. He heard that he had voted against the constitution. And he says, "I don't want to have fascist people in my Facebook page, even though you're supposedly my brother in Zen. I don't want to have nothing to do with you." That is so wrong. That is so incredibly wrong. This guy has nothing to do with fascist or anything. It had to do with the great majority of the people that voted against it. It had nothing to do with taking. He happens to be a more conservative kind of person than many of us can be. So I was just warning them, like, please, let's try to be, especially with our people around us, respectful. We don't have to agree. We don't have to just lay back and let this crazy person do whatever he can do. But just let's be, our practice is exactly, that's a phenomena that occurs. A phenomena occurs, this man becomes the president. Now, how am I going to deal with that phenomena that occurs? It's not any different, not very much different. And at the same time, it shakes the hell out of us, like it did here. So there is, I believe, I don't have a doubt, and we're all different, we're all very different. But there's a ways to do things more appropriate, especially since we are practitioners, and especially if we want to be practitioners, actually actively practitioners in every aspect of our life, not perfectly at all, but just the willingness and the attention given to when a heavy kind of phenomena occurs and I am a wreck for it. Well, isn't that interesting? Can I see how much power I'm giving it, and then I let all my opinions and judgments come out? I think that's all that we need to do. There's no problem with anger. As Aitken always used to say, There's no problem with anger. Anger is a very human thing, and you can work with it. Do you think Nelson Mandela wasn't angry? I mean, if anybody wanted to, should be angry as people like him, 30-something years in prison. And Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, those happen to be non-white people, which that already tells us something. But there's some people in Europe. There was a man named Dag Hammarskjöld that once was the head of the United Nations. He was an incredible bodhisattva, really, really amazing. He died young while he was in power in the United Nations on a plane crash. We have people like Václav Havel in Czechoslovakia, real leaders, that had in mind and in their heart the wishes for the people of their country and to relieve their suffering, especially Havel after the Soviets left, So there are ways that we can deal with this. And my advice is always don't get 100% interest in every news that happen and read every article of the atrocity and then get together with friends and comment. So that has not much to do what I'm going to be reading, but in a way it has a lot to do. And it has a lot to do with this taking the situation at the moment as you can, but with the wish not just to let your habitual patterns of behavior just run wild because they just would naturally do it that way. Or at least, just pay attention. Here they are, and if they're in the middle of it, okay, I'm in the middle of it. But we often take this advices or this, even the things that Shantideva says, that we have to be a certain way, that we should be a certain way. We should be a certain way at that moment when you notice and what you do at that moment. And maybe you don't do it perfectly, but you know what's going on. So I'm going to read about Vidya. Vidya, often translated as vigor. And this is Ejo McMullen, who's a teacher, Soto Zen teacher in Eugene, Oregon. I remember he used to be the youngest member of the ACTA. He might be 50 now. He had a tragedy happen a few years ago. His little daughter died of leukemia. And this is an article. I'm not going to read the whole article. It says, not a separate thing. No separate thing. And he starts by saying, I am grateful to have come upon a path that asked me to buck up, to throw myself in completely, to take my yearnings for awakening seriously, and to commit to an arduous road. I am grateful because this is how life is. Life is vigorous. My teacher didn't ask me to give up my family, my job, or commitment to reform society. Instead, he invited me into my own life of striving, into the dynamic force of embodiment, whatever shape that might take. I think it's a lovely first paragraph. The practice of Viryaparamita, or vigor, is best when it's straightforward, not reliant on a clear idea of what, how, or why, but enacted directly. And this is, I think, this I really like. The practice of Viryaparamita, or vigor, is best when it's straightforward, not reliant on a clear idea. Oh, Viryaparamita means like we should be more like this and not like this, and we do it a certain way and blah 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 blah. But just be willing to, when something happens, step in, remembering Viryaparamita, and do whatever you do at that moment. And sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not, but it's irrelevant. So we we sort of are committed to take the next step, but ideally with remembrance and mindfulness of that. I wish to be aware going through this as much as possible. And just at that moment, and at that moment, and at that moment. So he says, not relying on a clear idea about how or why, but enact it directly. There's nothing wrong with wanting to know how or why, but, then we're clear about how or why, and then we get into something completely different from just meeting it and, oh, okay, what do I do now? And the willingness to jump in. Too often, a clear idea feels sufficient. And that sense of sufficiency gets in the way straightforward doing. Direct enacting reveals the depths that our figuring mind doesn't even consider. The perfection of vigor is the practice of this straightforwardness, both the subject and the mode of inquiry. So, yeah, it strikes me, that he gives us advice that don't have it all figured out or read texts over and over again and see if you are complying appropriately. It's like if I want to, like I was telling the people in Argentina, or what I tell myself with the difficult political situations, or with the war in Israel and Palestine and Ukraine. It's terribly painful. I had actually a beautiful experience today, out of the blue. I have a friend in Facebook, one of those people that I've never met in my life. I had no idea that he was from Palestine, from Gaza. And for some reason, I'm not sure. Oh, I think I heard that he was from Gaza. He posted something and I said, oh, I hope your family is okay. So he gets in touch with me and asks me if I have any money to charge his phone, because he doesn't have a phone and he's living on a shelter with a family. And he really needs the phone. And I says, I don't know how to charge your phone from here. So eventually I sent him $40 through PayPal, and he was completely blown out because it arrived immediately, of course, But, that kind of thing, it was so interesting. I mean, I would have never known that I was going to be talking from somebody from Gaza. There was no morbid stuff, because I never thought I was going to talk to him. I just wished him well and make sure that his family was well. So in a way, I'm talking about that. In a way, I'm talking about if I wish to be my practice and my life as seamless. Remember that koan, build me a seamless tomb. The emperor says, oh, what is that? What on earth would that be? That term seamless, it's continuous, there's no no sewing in between the piece of cloth. I didn't know that the saris and the robes of the Theravadan monks, they're also a single piece of cloth that they just wrap it around. I knew that the sari of women, men use saris too, but it's extremely long though, because they fold it in many ways. So it's that idea, that it's like, can we have this seamless wish? And I think that it's not that I'm practicing with a koan at that moment and every moment, or with my breath, or that I remember, oh, I should be mindful. No. It's more like an attitude and a wish, and I let it go. And I wish and I let it go. And I remember and I do something, whatever I do. It could be just a breath or just a shift in heart expression. I don't know. So I'll continue. Buddhism has always prized great effort. The legend of the Buddha centers on this great effort to know and liberate suffering, to win victory over greed, hate, and delusion, following his example and that of countless ancestors. Since we put ourselves forward on the path, we don't just think abstractly of what might be true. We put ourselves in fully and reservedly to uncover the noble truth of suffering. This total commitment is the only way to become a servant of liberation. So try make the great effort to live. I'm skipping stuff. So try to make a great effort to live, think, and be vigor. Be the paramita. Walking through the gate, responding to the invitation. See how this simple intention is so deeply profound. The roots go down past our seeing. The roots go down past our seeing. The trying might feel shallow at first, but with each step, the direct effort connects with the depths. That is so true. We find that out, and we have been finding that out. Not necessarily at the moment, but it's like somebody has used the metaphor of practice being like rain sometimes, or even fog, that you're walking, and it's foggy, and somehow you are soaked, not too soaked, not like rain, but you know what I'm saying? It penetrates. And in a way, I think this practice of recognizing, remembering and recognizing our true nature in the midst of something, and maybe for a few moments, and then letting it go, because like the guy that I quoted a few months ago, because we don't have the stability to simply hang on with it for the rest of the day. But if we do a lot of these remembrance, recognition, and at that moment, you do what you do without any judgment, just the energy, the vigor, the willingness, the wish to, right. Okay, continue and continue. So bodhisattvas do not just force themselves into the battlefield. He was, for a while there, he was using the metaphor, the analogy of practice, and sometimes like going into battle or going into some kind of a difficult situation, So bodhisattvas do not force themselves onto the battlefield to cut down what is inconvenient or problematic. This warrior's armor is the wholeness. This warrior's armor is the wholeness. The intention to awaken is not separate, not separating. As I touch, I am touched. As I see, I am seen. There is an alive world in which I am not a problem. I can walk forward with energy, with the freedom of my intention. I can take care of things. I can do my best. This is different from being right. It is paying attention while taking a step. I think it's so simple and brilliant and beautiful. And so when we talk about vigor in terms of the perfections, it is not vigor just for vigor's sake. We're talking about vigor that is liberating. This is about the energy that comes from realizing our responsibility toward and our entanglements with beings and things. Vigor as a perfection is the striving that aims at actualizing mutuality, not understanding it, but revealing the actuality with the step taking now. The whole body of Buddha practice is oriented in this response. Yeah. Just reading it again, just I love it. You know, we're grandiose, you know. I've been using the term that we often take this practice conversations as like we have to be clear, and then we have this nice piece of cloth that we wrap ourselves, you know, like a shawl. You know, we wrap ourselves in this thing that we are learning and we know, which is kind of far out and beautiful. But I think that a lot of what we do is not wrapping myself in anything. It's just recognizing this step and having the intention, the wish, and hopefully too, for many people, you know, have had an opening, have had an experience of what is this Buddha nature. And it's recalling it and recognizing it. Because you don't have to be in a particular way to have it, you know, it's always there, even in the midst of confusion and in the midst of total ignorance. It's right there. And it comes from exactly the same ground as you waking up, or you completely deluded. It's exactly the same ground. So it lightens and alive and enliven so much what it means to have this wish to have continuous practice, to have this wish to really be aware of vows of bodhisattva. Again, not that we're going to do it perfect, because you don't even get into perfect. You don't go in that area. You've done it for 20, 30, 40 years, 50 years. Let it go. I think that's all of me. There's a quote, sometimes in articles, they pick up a quote and they just emphasize on top of the page. And here it says, when there is no end in sight, we need for vigor to become something more profound than just trying harder. This is where our heart breaks. It is also where we have the chance for an authentic response. So that kind of spontaneity, spontaneity, and, well, the word I've been using instead of that word, it's not the same, but it's the simultaneity. It's the moment that the wish is there, the attention is there. If you know what's going on, you're there. You don't know what's going on in your head and package it and analyze it, and then you act. No, it appears, and then you're willing to enter it in the way that you happen to be. And ideally, we are present, mindful. We know what's going on. So that vigor, it includes, the surprise. It includes the not knowing, and yet we take the step. I remember John Tarrant a couple of times reminded me, Anil, you don't need to be clear. You need to be clear to the next step. I mean, it's fine if you're clear for the second step, but it might not happen. But you're right there for the next step. You know what to do, and you take it. And then maybe the next step, it'll show up, and then you have you take it. But again, as he was saying earlier there, it's like, don't try to have it all together, but just be willing to receive the phenomena, to receive our life, whatever and however way it comes to us. And remember that this is what we do. Okay. This is Buddha Dharma, which is the only magazine. I used to subscribe to all of them. It's the only magazine I still subscribe. They're always really good issues with the same topic. This is the topic of the living paramitas. And it's nice, long, deep articles, that 5-6 people write.
Excuse me, is that the current issue?
No, dear, no, it's an old one. It's spring 22. Yeah.
Okay.
And there's an interesting photograph there.
Yes, very nice.
I'll look at this.
1 yen.
So, how's everyone doing? Nice to see you, Nettie. Congratulations on working your butt off over there, man. Probably those of you that have Facebook have seen Nettie making bricks and using an excavator, Yeah.
Yeah, I could say a few things about vigor. I do think practice can give us confidence in our capacity to be vigorous. The situation I have of one of my sons has developed a really profound schizophrenia, and he's been in a more or less continual psychosis for 5 months now. And I've just had to totally rearrange my life. And I don't want to lose my Sangha, which is in Canberra, but my son is in 4.5 hours away in a little rural area. And so I'm just kind of like, just going to go day by day. Like you said, Danielle, about I just only need to know the next step. And I drive to Canberra so I can be with the Sangha for 2 days of the week. I drive back to my son, and he's going to lose his house sometime soon, but he doesn't care because he's in a psychotic state. And so I'm trying to build him a house. Like I'm literally trying to build him a house, with limited funds and skills. I haven't used these skills for, 30 years since I've lived on the land, but just taking this attitude of, what seems to be needed, and I'm just going to do what I can each day. And if it fails, it fails, and if it succeeds, it succeeds, and just do it day by day. Just kind of sense it, and that the parameter about vigor, I've always loved that. You know, really honoring that you can be energetic in the Dharma. You know, really be energetic. So yeah, I've learned how to use an excavator in my 60s, and it's actually super fun. There's all these different levers. Like it's quite a complex machine. It's not just doesn't just do that. It kind of extends out and it twists, and it's quite a thing.
Please be careful, dear. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
Sometimes those things, if you don't do it properly, then it would fall on its side, you know?
Yeah. I'm definitely careful, and I'm also learning to look after myself. Like right now, I'm in a motel because I just didn't want to do the full drive to Canberra in one hit. So I thought I'll just stay in a motel, middle of the day. I can join in with Rocks and Clouds Zendo and have an easy afternoon, you know, and I'll have more energy for the drive up to Canberra tomorrow morning, you know. So it's like Vigor, but you know, so having to look after everybody, including my own physical body.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, and the other thing too, Danielle, that you said right at the beginning about everything being practice. And for me, it's trying to trust that even though part of me just wants to do Sangha related things, my situation is I really have to care for my son. There's no one else to do it. And he'll just fall apart if somebody doesn't do it. And just trying to trust it can all be practice. This crazy situation is so unusual. I never expected to be in. It can be practice. It just can be. Just as much as being in robes and offering incense, I can be listening to my son saying these things that are kind of really out there. Yeah.
That he does make sense sometimes, you know. I mean, I've been with people with schizophrenia, and sometimes they're way more perceptive and clear than many of us, you know.
I know, it's quite shocking, you know, and that's why it's kind of hard to be with him, because you can't be patronizing,
Yeah.
because he can be very smart, but then he's going to say something that's really give it, like you suddenly realize, oh, he's functioning in a totally different frame of mind, even though I didn't realize until this very moment. And it just moves in and out. You know, yeah, it's yeah. Yeah, it's big learning curve. Yeah.
That's,
Yeah. Thank you for listening. I don't get to talk to many people about it because, you know, not an easy thing to talk about with people.
I'm glad you joined us, and please, as often as you want, you know. It's always wonderful to see you.
I always have it in my planner. It's always in there, and whichever week I can do it, then I do it. But each week I move it across. So 2:30 Thursdays it is for me in the afternoon.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Good to see you all.
And it's awesome, Nettie. Really awesome. I've worked with schizophrenic patients and others in mental health as a therapist, and yes, all I can say is yes. I think you're doing the right thing. I think you probably know that too. But yeah, good job.
Thank you. Yeah, just thank you.
It's powerful to hear you keep your connection with your son too, just that deep sense of love, even in some non-ordinary mind states where logic isn't where connection is. There still is connection and heart and relationship. And it sounds like, even though like as a mom, it would have more pain than it would be for someone else, it sounds like you're bearing witness to that and meeting him in this beautiful way, which in and of itself is a pretty radical practice, frankly. And I'm just really honored you and grateful for him that he has you.
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
Well, at some point we should talk about next week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also just want to say, rather not talk about next week just yet, but just I'll say a little bit about the vigor seems like an incredibly important practice. I think I've had times in my practice where I felt like I was trying to become perfect in the paramitas rather than just live with that sense of vigor and diving into my life and letting it teach me. And it had this experience, like Trump has this image of putting like a head on top of the head on top of the head on top of the head, you're always kind of looking for the next person to kind of whack you with a stick to kind of put you in the right state, and in truth, it's a lot, this vigor thing is so beautiful because it's a whole lot more rich than that. It's that I'm already intimate with the whole universe. Whatever action I take is kind of fundamentally enough, and it will have consequences, and those consequences will rub, and I'll learn, and I'll change, and I'll grow from those, and I'll deepen from them. But it's not like anything's added to it, it's not like anything is made from it, other than maybe I become softer, more like a little bit more straightforward, a little bit simpler, and a little bit more direct. And so I'm really grateful for this, and I'm gonna kind of hang out with the places that I don't want to dive in, or places that I'm willing, or places I tend to pad myself and see if there's a little bit more of an intimacy with life to dive into. It's grateful for it. Thanks, Dee.